Hi, welcome to another episode of Cherish TV. We are so glad you're here, and we love bringing you a different view week after week. And one of the things that we love to do is talk about the things that are being talked about in our world. And some of the things that are being talked about aren't always necessarily the funnest topics, but they are topics that are real for people and things that people are really genuinely asking. So we love to take the time to kind of respond to them. And one of the questions we have today that we got from a few of our viewers was this: how do I recover after loss? We know in this world there's all sorts of things that happen, and people are trying to, respond appropriately. So we want to talk about, like, what do you do when something comes at you in life? How do you appropriately respond? Andy, I might throw to you. I know some of your story. Maybe you could share and how you responded.
Yeah, for sure. I walked through a divorce about 8 years ago, and you learn a lot of lessons going through a time like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the major lessons I learned is that it just takes time.
Wow.
Dealing with loss and grief, you've got to allow yourself time to go through it.
Andy, I have a question for you actually on that point. How long did you hold on to your joint possessions with your ex-wife, wedding photos, that kind of thing? Because I know for a lot of people it might be a tripping point. You know, they've got these really emotional memories in their home. What did you do?
I remember it was a process, and I would walk past that picture frame, or I remember one time I had a massive photo collage that she had put together for her birthday, and it just contained tons of memories of our journey and everything. And it probably took me about, I think it was about 12 to 18 months to finally bring myself to take the whole thing down to the dumpster and just put it in there. And because it's just this emotional journey of, am I ready to let go of that memory and never see it again? But again, it came down to feeding on truth. I had to tell myself, there were some things that God asked his followers to use a Bible term, to devote to destruction. And what it meant was to give it to God as an offering. And because that way I know that my memory it's not actually going in the garbage. I'm entrusting it to the Lord. Every tear he keeps. And so that my grief can become an offering to him when I entrust the memories, entrust everything that was invested. It doesn't nullify our story. It means that I do have to let it go, and that's the grieving part. But I get to entrust it to God, and so it's not lost.
Do you think there's a time frame attached to that? Would you give advice to people out there who are walking through this? Is there a time you feel like is appropriate to hold on? When is it too long?
It's a great question. It might not be a certain amount of days and weeks and months. It might be you have to actually get yourself to that process. But know that it's a significant step in that journey.
I love that time. Have you got anything on that, Lisa?
Yeah, so in my story, I lost my mom about 5 months ago. So I'm still having a lot of emotions, processing what's happened. But I feel like my emotions are up and down. I'll be happy one moment, and then I'll think of her, and then I'll start crying. I'm sad. And I feel like what's important is that you allow yourself to deal with those emotions as they come. Don't squash them or numb them, because then you're not able to process it well. So, I feel like there's a point at every day that I start to tear up, but I feel like it is important for me to have those moments, and then remember the good things as I process her being gone.
I remember after the loss, I would go to certain places. If you're driving through certain places where you've got a memory there, it would trigger something. And I'd have to allow the tears to come out, allow the emotions to rise up. And because if you don't express them, they don't just go away by themselves. They're still in there, and they can cause problems later down the track. I remember having a conversation with Mike Connell when he came through our church, and he said to use music to process. And so,
which is great coming from a worship.
That's right.
Yeah, so that made total sense to me. And so just like you said, allowing yourself to go through that, because I found that you'll feel like you go through ups and downs. Your emotions move like the ocean, I found, but there's truth, there's things that don't change underneath all of that, like the bedrock. But the emotions are the things that we feel from moment to moment, and we have to allow ourselves to go through it. I would feel like I was, for about 3 or 4 months, I feel like I'm over this. I'm totally in the clear. I'm good. I got a positive outlook. And then I would go somewhere that would trigger a memory, or I'd hear a song, or it can be any range of things that triggers it. And then you're heartbroken for however long, 2, 3 weeks or months.
So the question is, like, can I recover after loss? Like, to respond to that, so you're saying that
Yep.
it's a process and process take time. So
Yeah.
recovery is kind of a fluid thing. So
Yep.
it can look different maybe depending on the day, depending on what you're responding to on the day.
Yeah. I mean, a psychologist or marriage and family therapist will tell you that the grief cycle usually lasts for around 3 years.
Okay.
And I remember waking up one day about 3 years after the divorce and realizing that I was free. I was like, I haven't bled over this for about 3 months now, and
Wow.
it feels completely different. And then I was like, wow, it is about 3 years. And then I knew I was in the clear. But it was a clear moment when I just woke up and realized I'd been free for some time.
As somebody, I know Andy's grief was, was a bit longer than yours was. Yours was quite a recent grief. Is that encouragement to you to know that there will become a point in your recovery where it will feel that way?
Definitely. And but I have talked to people too that she was my mom. You're always going to miss her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Totally.
so
And that's
you'll
okay.
always
I don't think
miss
that ever
her,
goes away.
And you just accept that she's gone. And
100%.
a thing that's helping me too is
Yeah.
celebrating who she was, and celebrating things she did and songs she'd sing, and celebrating her and putting a picture up of her and remembering her really helps the life that she
So
spent
good.
here, and just celebrate that.
I
I
love
think
that.
that too, I think both of you are drawing out. I mean, we've got different types of loss.
Yeah.
And so I think that determines different types of grief.
Yeah.
But what you
Yeah, it
both
does.
said, which I think is so important, is that you both faced it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found
Yeah.
actually a lot of friends, a lot of people who aren't facing their grief
Yeah.
or sorrow or loss.
Yeah.
And so that then has
Draws
become
it out.
extended.
Exactly.
So I think that grief can last a
Yeah.
really long time if we don't address it. And sometimes we need the help of people, probably wouldn't you say,
Absolutely.
and like
Oh,
friends.
How did
and,
you do it, Andy?
Yeah.
How did
I
you
needed
face?
the help of all the people around me.
Okay.
Because you're so vulnerable. You've got a space there that used to be occupied by that special person in your life, or a parent, or a mum, or father. You try to fill it with someone else. I've heard a lot of people say that the way you process an old relationship sometimes is through a new relationship.
Okay.
I think there may be some truths to that, but there's a lot of dangers with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine.
The hardest thing when I see someone go through a divorce, I'm like, I know how hard it is to try and stay out of rebound relationships.
Yeah.
Because I know how vulnerable you are and how much you're desperate for a companion. But if
So
you
that's
can
the
hold
epitome of a
off,
rebound, is where it's fulfilling a recovery moment for you, as opposed to
100%,
about a
yeah.
relationship. It's
Right.
about helping the process of recovery.
exactly. But it's so hard to discern, and so that's why you need people around you that
Yeah.
can really speak into your decisions.
That's
Right.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I want to make sure I process it well. I'm very conscious about wanting to process it well, because I don't
Yeah.
want to numb myself so that I'm not able to help other people. So it helps
Yeah,
me
that's
to
great.
help and look at other people and celebrate their wins and help them, because then it takes my mind off of I'm hurting, and so I don't want to
So
numb
good.
that part of the emotions for me, so I can
brilliant.
be available to others too.
And don't you think like putting yourself in positions where you are doing things that are purposeful
Oh, yeah.
and are lovely, so that
Absolutely.
it's not just a replacement,
Yeah.
but we don't go into that solitude.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
because a
it's
lot
so
of people, it's
important.
like you draw back
Yeah.
into, and then all of a sudden loneliness, the old dream, all that stuff is
Yeah.
coming back. But when you
Yeah.
face it, and you go, okay, you know what? I'm going to serve more in the church.
Yeah.
I'm going to hang
Yeah,
out with my
absolutely.
friends.
Love
I'm going to
that.
have
Yeah.
some
That-
fun in the face of loss. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
discount the pain,
Yeah.
but it gives you something else to hold on to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That actually helps to heal you.
It
know,
does.
being around people,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
around
Right.
life,
Big
and,
time.
and so that really helps
Yeah,
stay
it's
out
so
of that
good.
depression.
I found I needed to feed on truth and not lies.
Wow.
Good.
Feed
Come
on truth
on.
and not just my emotions.
That's a great
Right.
word.
So
Yeah.
the picture that I had for my own circumstance going through that was that my emotions were like the oceans. They're just, and it rhymes.
So worship
was
pastor of you, Andy.
Ocean of emotion.
The ocean
But-
of emotion.
And so they will rise
Yeah.
and fall. But underneath all of that is some unchanging truth that
Come
for
on.
me, my word going through that grief process was, we know that God makes all things work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that shone through
Wow.
so strong. And I found that it was actually completely unshaken. I was
Yes.
surprised at how solid it was and how unmoved it was the whole time. But you don't discover the level of the Word of God's power in your life sometimes until you go through a storm like that.
No, so true.
So I've found that I had to hold on to truth and speak that even when my emotions were telling me something completely different.
Wow, that's such wisdom in it, and I hope that's such an encouragement for people out there that might be asking themselves that question, like, how do I recover from this loss in your life? This might be really encouraging for people out there that are asking themselves the question, how do I recover from loss? So thank you so much for sharing, guys.
Sure.
We're so, as always, we are so thankful for you joining us at Cherish TV. We'd love for you to continue to keep watching, keep sharing, keep letting us know the conversations you'd like us to be having on Cherish TV. We'll see you next time.
Who can find a virtuous woman? For her worth is far above rubies. She seeks wool and flax, and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night, and provides food for her household. She girds herself with strength, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes tapestry for herself. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. Whoa!